Welcome back, everyone. Let's start typing out our form input component. To begin, we want to convert this over from JSX to TSX, both the form input component as well as the styles. And first, you'll notice immediately that our form input label has a type error. The reason is that shrink is a any call. And the reason for this is because the form input component for form input label is a component and we have not defined any props on it. So we're trying to use props on this component despite the fact that the props are not defined. So here, defining props for these style components is the exact same as defining props for any component because these are really just components. So here we'll say type form input label props is going to be equal to us receiving some shrink value, which is optional. And this is a Boolean. And what we'll say is that form input label props needs to be passed to this component as the props. So the great thing about style components is that you can just pass it as a generic to the style.label because by default, that's the definition. They take some generic value and then add it as the actual props that it expects to receive. And now you'll see that shrink is indeed a Boolean value. So now we can save this and then go back to our form input component and start typing this out. So as you can tell, as I mentioned before, we are really just leveraging the underlying input component in order for us to extend all of these additional features onto it. But the input component, just like the button component, has corresponding HTML attributes that we want from React. So we're going to import in input HTML attributes. And we're also going to implement FC because we need this to be a functional component. What we're going to do now is we're going to type out these form input props. So this is going to be first the label value, which is our unique value, which we expect to be a string. And then from here, we are going to create an intersection with input HTML attributes. So we want all of the input HTML attributes of a HTML input element. And now we are going to say that form input is of type functional component with the form input props. So now we've solved our props issue for the type. However, the problem here is that if you look at this, there's a chance that the other props object is undefined, assuming that no props are passed. So here what we can say is that first, if this is the case, what we want to do is we want to ensure that this shrink always receives a Boolean because shrink is receiving essentially a Boolean value. So what we can do is we can say Boolean on this value like so. And the first thing we'll check is there other props. So is other props.value, is this exist? If it does, then can we render other props.value? Well, now we'll notice that length might not exist because on this particular case, we don't know what we could get back. Length might not exist on the value coming back as a number because inputs can receive both strings and numbers. So if that's the case, then we need to do another check to ensure, is this going to be a string? So here we'll say, is type of other props.value equal to a string? If it's equal to a string as well, then finally, I want you to check if there's a length. And now we are now correctly passing and properly typing through our form input. Now that we've done our form input, let's think about where they might get used. The places where we insert inputs is in both the sign-in form and the sign-up form. So let's type out these forms. So again, we are going to convert this over to a TSX file. Now, first off to begin, we can check in our sign-in-form.styles, and we see that none of our style components receive props. So we don't need to type any of these. We can focus exclusively on our sign-in-form.component. So here, we also notice that our sign-in-form doesn't receive props, but our handle submit and our handle change do receive props. Now, we need to type these. We've already typed handle change before, which essentially is what we pass the on change of an input. So we can expect similarly then that handle submit is going to follow a similar pattern where we receive some kind of event from React. What kind of event is it? We can just convert this over to a function signature and we can just put E, hover over it. We see that it is of type form event. So we need to import in form event in order for us to actually type these two fields. So first we're going to come up here and we're going to say, give me the form event. And also for the change handler, give me the change event. Using these two now, we can say that the event that we receive from handle submit will be of type form event. And we're going to pass it, as always, HTML form element most likely. And that's exactly what we see. Similarly, for our handle change, we are going to pass in change event with HTML input element being the type of change event that we're registering. Now, if we save this, we see we have no more type errors for our sign-in form. So we can move on to our sign-up form. So let's first convert these files over to TSX files. We notice there, inside of our styles, there are no props, so we don't need to worry about typing this one. We can now just do our sign-up form component. With our sign-up form component, we notice that we actually have some leftovers that we aren't using from our inputs. We can just get rid of that. And now again, we see that there are two different type errors. We'll have the two different events for submit and for handle change. And we also see we get an error code. Now, the first one I want to tackle is just the event. So as always, just like we did with React, we are going to bring in two events. One is the form event for the submit. One is the change event for the input. So I'm going to say that this handle event is a form event of the HTML form element. And then for our handle change, this is going to be a change event for HTML input element. Now, what about this error code? So here you might be thinking, what is this error? Well, we're actually catching this error inside of our auth start, which is what signup start gives us back if we catch. So this is where we may not actually get the error that we expect. What we need to do is we need to get the auth error. So this is where inside we can say, okay, if we get some kind of authentication error, we need to import in most likely some kind of error from Firebase. And the chances are it's actually something that exists. So inside of Firebase /auth, there are two types. One is the auth error type. And here we see there's even auth error codes. So what's great about this is that we can take this auth error and we can actually directly modify the code here so that we're not even hard coding these values. We actually get these directly from Firebase. So the first thing we need to do is say that this error code is a specific type of error. So error as auth error, because we know this is an error from Firebase auth. .code must exist on the auth error because that's where we're reading it from. And now instead of matching this string ourselves, we can say auth error codes dot, and then now we can just find the one that we had before, which is email exists. As you can see when hovering over this, this was the same string that we had earlier, auth email already in use. So amazing. We don't even have to now reference our own dependency of figuring out what that string was. We can save this now, and now we have our forms also fully typed. So that is really great. We've typed our forms, we've typed our inputs, we've also typed out our buttons. So now that we've typed this, let's start typing something else that might be a little challenging, which is our SVG icons. So let's tackle that in the next video.